Amazing twist. Single mom's surprising one-night decision reveals a hidden billionaire CEO. Sarah felt the familiar weight of exhaustion pulling her down as she returned home from yet another long shift at the diner. With her shifts at the bar and her part-time gig cleaning offices during the day, her once vibrant spirit seemed dimmed by the relentless grind of survival. But every evening, as she set the table for dinner with Jake, her teenage son, she was reminded of why she persevered. If she worked hard enough, Jake could have a shot at college, a dream she could barely comprehend for herself. That night, guilt gnawed at her. Though she felt too tired to go out, her friend had insisted she attend the charity auction. "You need a break, Sarah." She could almost hear her say it again. Uneasy about swapping her sweat-soaked apron for something suitable to wear among the town's elite, she hesitated, fearing judgment from those who donned finery while she toiled in worn jeans. But to please Jake, who urged her to inject fun into their routine, she finally relented. As they stepped into the bustling community center, she felt out of place among patrons adorned in designer dresses and tailored suits. The laughter and chatter surrounded her like a swirling fog of wealth and privilege, making her feel small. With every glance, every compliment exchanged, a wall rose within her. It screamed that she was different. The event's allure and the unwelcome reminders of her humble life clashed violently in her mind. "Mom, just enjoy it," Jake whispered, nudging her forward toward the silent auction table. With an ironic smile, she scanned the items. Then she saw it. The mysterious dine with a businessman experience. What was it worth? The impulse inside her surged, cloaked in curiosity and spontaneity. Perhaps this was her escape. She raised her paddle, surprising herself as much as everyone else in the room. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." As the evening unfolded, reality blurred when she discovered her date was none other than James Crawford, the elusive billionaire. Beneath her layers of insecurities, a flicker of excitement ignited. Their conversation, somehow elegant, yet grounded in raw honesty, showcased their shared determination despite their differing paths. She spoke of struggles, of the intent behind her 2 jobs, and the hope she held for Jake. James listened with intent, feeling the simplicity of a family meal resonate deeply in their dialogues. Yet something derailed this tight-knit energy. Here was a man far removed from her world, and she felt exposed. Her fears gripped her, suggesting that wealth held disdain for the simplicity she cherished. Jake peered from the dining room doors, his expression reflecting pride and confusion, amplifying her inner turmoil. Would he accept this connection, or would it fracture the delicate foundation of their home? With every moment spent with James, the weight of her reality pressed harder against her, as old memories she thought buried crept in like shadows, teasing her with dangerous secrets connecting their pasts. Could she risk all she had built, a life of love and loyalty, for a chance at something she'd never dared to pursue? That evening transformed into a battleground for her heart. Sarah's breaths grew shallow under the pressure of choice. Embrace the extraordinary allure of James, or retreat to the familiar comforts of the ordinary. As silence hung thick, she wrestled with this new, unfathomable affection blossoming amid their contrasting worlds. Her heart raced with anxiety, but so did the desire for a leap toward possibility. The stakes had never felt so high. Sarah's head spun as she stepped away from the table, the pulse of uncertainty thrumming through her. Should she expose her heart, or guard it fiercely against the allure of something uncharted? The quiet chaos around her blurred, leaving only the solitary weight of her decision. "Mom?" Jake's voice cut through her fog, grounding her in reality. He wore the same expression he had when he first learned to ride a bike, the blend of pride and fear. "Are you okay?" She managed to smile, but it felt fragile, as if the slightest breeze could scatter its pieces. "Yeah, just a lot to take in." Jake scanned the room, then his gaze landed on James, who stood at the bar, radiating confidence. "You really seem to like him." "Like him?" Sarah couldn't help the small laugh that escaped. "I hardly know him. He's a businessman. There's no future in that." "Mom, sometimes taking a chance is worth the risk." Jake's eyes sparkled with a youthful idealism she'd buried long ago. The spark reminded her of her own dreams, what had gone unfulfilled while she toiled away for survival. As the evening progressed, her mind wandered to those dreams. The joy of creating art, the feelings of confidence she used to embody as a young woman. They had dimmed, eclipsed by the demands of everyday life. What did it mean to expose herself to a world where she wasn't just a caretaker or a waitress? What if James saw her insecurity and lost interest? Then, amid her spiraling thoughts, James approached her, his sharp gaze fixed on her with intensity. "You have a unique perspective, Sarah. I enjoy our conversations." "I don't belong in your world," she whispered, a confession that felt both releasing and binding. Who defines belonging? You or the perceptions of others? He smiled, but the question hung heavily in the air. Sarah's internal defenses crumbled under his words, revealing fragments of her own fears. This was the tug-of-war between yearning acceptance and battling past disappointments. "I just don't want to disappoint Jake. I don't want him to think I'm chasing a dream that's not real." James stepped closer. "But what if this experience could reshape your future? What if embracing change ignites something inside you that's been waiting to bloom?" His words were a siren's call, tempting her to consider paths untaken, potential reignited. Could the liberating weight of his gaze awaken her own ambitions, their dreams intertwining? But the steep pit of self-doubt beckoned her back. "James, I work 2 jobs. I'm barely making ends meet. I can't entertain fantasies. Maybe it's time to see what you can create from the canvas of your life. Wouldn't it be incredible to find fulfillment beyond these walls?" The challenge stirred something deep within her. Imagine stepping beyond her small existence, a woman rediscovering herself, her passions igniting new aspirations. Paradoxically, fear remained. It clutched tightly around her heart, asking delicate questions she wasn't ready to confront. "Could you let me guide you, even just a little? It could open doors you've never thought possible," Sarah pondered. Could this man, attracted by her straightforward nature, lead her beyond her familiar confines? If she took that step, would she emerge stronger, or lose herself in the undertaking? The night ebbed, and outside darkness crept in, mirroring her internal struggle. She felt more lost than ever. The weight of possibility was suffocating. "I need time," she finally managed, urgency tinging her voice. For the first time, both her heart and mind raced, thrumming with uncertainty, yet edged with hope. And as she walked Jake out into the cool night air, reality crashed back like a wave. Could she contest the belief that she had chosen a stagnant life? Or was there a chance to evolve, to thrive amidst the struggle? The pull of that unformed future still lingered, beckoning her to decide. One thing was clear: the moment of reckoning loomed. When the light flickered on potential, would she have the courage to match it with her own? The night faded into silence, but the questions lingered. Was she ready to embrace change, or would fear root her in place once more? The morning sun pierced through the curtains, casting fragmented light across Sarah's kitchen table, where bills stacked like ominous towers. The remnants of last night's emotional upheaval lingered, a heavy cloud obscuring her thoughts. Unsure how to navigate the discomfort, she poured herself coffee, the aroma attempting to bolster her flagging spirits. Jake bounded into the room, his youthful enthusiasm radiating an infectious energy that momentarily chased away her doubts. "Mom, can you help me set up my project for school? It's about dreams and what we want to be when we grow up." The irony of his request stung. Dreams, the very concept that had flickered in and out of her life like a moth dancing around a flame. She nodded, forcing a smile. "Of course, honey. Let's do this." As they gathered supplies, she felt an unexpected flicker of resolve ignite in her chest. If Jake was encouraged to dream, then so could she. But how did one begin to pull themselves from the quicksand of daily obligations into the realm of aspiration? The thought alone sent a shiver of panic through her. They made their way to the dining room table, sprawling art supplies across the surface. Jake lit up, sketching wildly as he shared his futuristic visions of himself as an astronaut and teacher. It sparked something within Sarah, an inkling of possibility. "Mom, what about you?" Jake's innocent question snapped her out of her reverie. "What's your dream?" The answer tumbled in her chest, a combination of fear and yearning. I used to want to be an artist, a painter," she finally managed, the admission almost surreal. "Then you should do that," Jake shouted, excitement bubbling over. "You could paint our living room. I'll help." His enthusiasm was infectious, but it drew her momentarily back to reality. "But Jake, painting doesn't pay the bills. One day you'll understand." She placed the sharp corners of her worries on the table, but the words left her feeling hollow. "Sometimes things aren't about money, you know," Jake replied thoughtfully, sizing her up with his concerned gaze. "What do you want to be?" The question scraped against the wall she had built for so long. In that moment, she realized how little she had embraced the possibility of change, how often she had sacrificed her own ambitions for perceived stability. "Okay, what if I do start painting again? Just for fun?" Sarah suggested, testing the waters. The words escaped like fragile butterflies flitting from her lips. "Yes!" Jake cheered, pumping his fists in delight. "We can paint a mural together." Laughter floated between them, and Sarah felt warmth seep into her soul. But buried beneath that joy, an unshakable anxiety settled in. Would this be just another fleeting illusion? As Jake turned to grab more paint colors, Sarah's mind buzzed. She dug deeper into the possibilities. What if painting wasn't just a hobby but a way to explore something greater? She could document her journey, chart her growth. Could James's words carry merit? Maybe she could carve out a space for herself amidst her responsibilities. However, an ominous voice inside her rattled her ambitions. What if she failed? Could she face Jake if she didn't succeed again? Just as she reached for a brush, her phone buzzed on the table, jolting her thoughts into a new direction. It was a message from James. "I've been thinking about our conversation. Let's talk more about your aspirations. Are you free today?" Her heart raced. The opportunity to develop both personally and professionally loomed before her. But a darker thought lingered. Was this a step toward her dreams, or merely a distraction? Jake's voice pulled her from her worry. "Mom, painting with me means we can dream together. You can be the artist you wanted to be." Tension coiled tightly within her. Perhaps this was the moment she had been waiting for. A chance to blend both her aspirations and her responsibilities, to finally step away from her past mistakes. As resolve tugged warily at her heart, she glanced back at her phone, the screen illuminating the unfinished path ahead. Could she trust herself to chase this new chapter, or would she retreat into the shadows of her insecurities yet again? She inhaled deeply, the air thick with potential. Each second stretched agonizingly as she hovered over her decision. Would she respond to James, step into a world of limitless possibilities, or would the fear of failure hold her captive once more? The answer seemed just within reach, like the paintbrush poised in her fingers. The real question endured. Was she ready to commit to the process of becoming and all its complexities? Sarah stared at her phone, the screen flickering with possibilities. The weight of indecision pressed on her chest like a heavy stone, yearning for release. She could respond to James, but what would that mean for her? Would a conversation about her aspirations transport her into uncharted territories, or plunge her deeper into the abyss of self-doubt? Jake's laughter echoed from the other room, a joyful reminder of the simple magic in his dreams. Perhaps there was wisdom in his innocent belief that dreams didn't have to be tethered to practicality. Maybe this moment was not just about painting walls, but about painting her life anew. Taking a deep breath, she felt a shift inside, a small rebellion against the stifling fear that had ruled her thoughts. With trembling fingers, she typed a response to James. "I'm free. Let's talk." The message left her hand with a cascade of anxiety and excitement, both exhilarating and terrifying. After sending the message, she felt an immediate sense of vulnerability, as if a door had been cracked open to a world she had long shut out. What if she couldn't articulate her dreams? What if they sounded foolish in the stark daylight of reality? Jake's voice returned, bringing her back to her immediate surroundings. "Mom, are you ready to paint?" His eyes sparkled with anticipation, a mirror to the new glimmers in her own heart. "Let's do this." She forced a smile, but inside a storm brewed. How could she inspire Jake to pursue his dreams when she was so entangled in her fears? They spread out the paints, a chaotic rainbow, and began with a large canvas that would become the mural they envisioned. Each stroke of the brush brought an unexpected rush of euphoria. The colors danced under her fingertips, reminding her of the late nights spent lost in her art as a young woman. It was intoxicating and thrilling. Sarah felt her spirit awaken. "Look, I'm an astronaut," Jake exclaimed, adding a swirl of stars across the corner. "And you can paint the sky green, like in that dream I had." "Green sky it is," Sarah replied, her laughter bubbling up. As the paint covered the canvas, so too did her fears begin to wash away. For each casual swipe, she let go of the what-ifs that had haunted her for years. Yet the moment of joy produced an inner backlash as she suddenly realized the fear had only retreated temporarily, like a tide pulling back before a storm. She glanced back at her phone, staring at it as though it would reveal the outcome of her decision. Would James's interest in her dreams inspire her, or expose her inadequacies? With each brushstroke, she found not only her creativity returning, but the intricate threads of her identity. Who was she without the suffocating cloak of obligation? Each color ignited new facets of herself that had lain dormant. Could she truly embrace this journey? Jake's unrelenting belief in her stirred something deeper within. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had spent so long trading her aspirations for certainty. Perhaps the decision to paint, to reconnect with herself and foster creativity, was the beginning, not a mere distraction. As they stepped back to admire their work, the mural, a vivid portrayal of creativity and dreams, mirrored the potential of their relationship. But with each moment of triumph came the question that loomed heavy. What happened when this burst of inspiration faded? The clock chimed, breaking her reverie, reminding her of the meeting with James. A lurking unease coiled in her stomach. What awaited her in that conversation? Was she ready to confront the truth of her aspirations, or would she return to the shadows of complacency? With resolve mingling with anxiety, she looked at Jake. His innocent excitement filled the room, and for the first time she contemplated the enormity of her journey ahead, the fear, the dreams, and the intertwining paths of personal growth. The mural stood as a testament to new beginnings, yet it all hinged on the next step she would take. What would she say to James? Would his encouragement embolden her, or would it reopen old wounds? The next hour loomed before her like the blank canvas she had just painted, vibrant yet daunting. She felt the air thicken with expectation. What awaited was unknown, yet she was on the verge of uncovering something that could change everything, if she was willing to face it. As she gathered her resolve, she could feel it coalesce into a singular thought. The time had come to face both herself and the infinite possibilities ahead. Would she grasp them, or would they slip away once more? The clock's persistent ticking invaded her thoughts as Sarah made her way to her desk, a committed determination guiding her steps. The vibrant mural she had crafted with Jake resonated in her mind, a living testament to her aspirations and the new path she was unwittingly forging. But a deeper realization nestled within her. This was not merely about painting colorful walls. It signified her desire for change, a yearning to transform others' perceptions. As she prepared for her conversation with James, Sarah instinctively reached for the notepad she kept next to her computer. The page lay blank, awaiting her thoughts. Yet she suddenly hesitated. What was she doing? She had spent the last decade crafting a life that revolved around practicality, but now she longed for authenticity. Could she really walk into that meeting and demand the space to be herself? Fire ignited within her, and she scribbled down her thoughts, weaving a narrative that poured from her heart. Her dreams of art, the thrill of color, and the spark of creativity needed to echo through her words. What if she allowed them to see Sarah, real and vulnerable? As she penned her aspirations, the pen flowed like the paint on canvas, revealing her hidden desires. When the time finally approached for her call with James, she felt an invigorating mix of fear and determination. She picked up the phone, her thumb hovering over the contact before she finally pressed call. Waiting felt like peering into a dark void, uncharted and awaiting her next move. "Hello?" The voice on the other end radiated assurance. It was warm, inviting, beckoning her forward with unspoken promise. "James, it's Sarah," she managed to say, swallowing her nerves. "I wanted to talk." "Good. I'm glad you reached out. I've been excited to hear your thoughts." His tone ignited something within her, as if he believed in her dreams more than she did herself. It was exhilarating. For a moment she felt lighter, nearly liberated by the prospect of unveiling her truth. As they spoke, she found herself articulating thoughts she once feared were naive. "I want to explore my artistry again, to connect it with my work, be part of something more than just the ordinary." Each word felt like a brushstroke on the empty canvas of her aspirations, filling the space with vibrant color. "Have you ever considered collaborating?" James interjected, his enthusiasm palpable. "Your mural, the way you blend colors and themes, has real potential. There are companies looking for fresh perspectives." The idea landed heavily in her chest. Collaborating? It felt surreal, yet the notion sparked excitement. A chance to transcend self-doubt and engage with others who appreciated her creative vision. Sarah sensed the possibility changing shape before her, like the colors on her canvas. "What do you mean?" she stammered, unsure if she was ready for the implications of such an opportunity. "Honestly, I see a lot of potential in you, Sarah. You have this unique ability to inspire through your art. It could resonate with communities starving for innovation. That mural you created with your son? It's just the tip of the iceberg." His words were like brush strokes across her chaotic thoughts, painting hope where only uncertainty had dwelled. But it brought with it a tide of inner turmoil. Did she have what it took to step beyond her comfort zone, especially when comfort had often blurred into complacency? A part of her screamed to retreat, to return to the role she had occupied for far too long. Yet another part urged to expand, to let the vibrant colors of her aspirations bleed through the boundaries. "Maybe I could develop some ideas," she ventured, almost surprised by her willingness to entertain such a thought. "Absolutely. Let's set some time next week to brainstorm," James responded, unaware of the seismic shift occurring within her. After she hung up, Sarah stood frozen, absorbing the transformation that was unfolding. Could she truly align her life with her passions, or would fear keep her from stepping into the light? Jake's laughter filtered in again, grounding her amidst the whirlwind of thoughts. He reminded her of her real motivation, cultivating a life filled with dreams, not just for herself, but for him. As the echoes of possibility danced in her mind, Sarah realized it was no longer just about individual aspirations. Her journey could illuminate a path for Jake, encouraging him to embrace his own dreams without hesitation. The realization diverged into a new question. What if she were to involve him in this journey more than merely being a passive observer? One decision now intertwined with another. As she reflected on the conversation with James, a flicker of apprehension ignited. What doors were opening? What obstacles would she have to confront? The phone buzzed again, a reminder of the meeting she had with James and the concept of collaboration. She felt the walls of her former self begin to tremble, but a newfound hope emerged, one infused with colors she was ready to explore. The intensity of her feelings began to intensify once more as she grasped the possibility of losing herself in the journey ahead. The decision to embrace both mothering and career ambitions lay ahead. If she were to take the leap, what would it reveal about her? About her insecurities? What other facts lingering in her mind might emerge as she collided with this new world? Her phone chimed again. It was a text from James. "Can't wait to see what you come up with. Let me know if you have any thoughts before our meeting." As Sarah stared at the screen, she realized those words were not merely validation, they were a challenge. Would she confront her fears, or retreat? Would she grasp this vision of a life lived authentically, vibrant and true? The echo of those colors solidified into a singular belief. A metamorphosis was upon her, and she couldn't turn back now. The canvas of her life awaited, and this time, It was up to her to fill it. But looming ahead was yet another question. As Sarah prepared to embrace these opportunities, what shadows from her past might resurface to challenge her newfound resolve? As Sarah settled back at her desk, the buzzing anticipation from her conversation with James intertwined with the burden of her past. The prospect of collaboration dazzled her, but the weight of old insecurities clouded her vision. Could she shatter the constraints of complacency and expose herself to a world that awaited her colorful rekindling? In the moments that followed, she took a deep breath, diving into her thoughts with a renewed vigor. She opened her notepad, the blank page whispering promises filled with potential. But instead of ideas, memories flooded her mind, moments when she hesitated, stifled by fear of judgment or failure. They became the shadows she had to confront if she hoped to embrace her artistic revival. Images of previous projects flickered before her. Failed attempts to incorporate her creativity at work often felt more constricting than liberating. The feedback, more critical than encouraging, echoed faintly now, weaving through her burgeoning confidence. "What if they see me as foolish?" a voice echoed in her head. It was a familiar pang, a self-doubt she had hoped to leave behind. Yet just beneath that familiar current, a spark emerged. What if her artistic endeavors were the catalyst for change? Not just for herself, but within the larger sphere of her career. Ideas began to swirl, and she realized she needed to turn these echoes into actions. A path forward depended on her willingness to risk vulnerability in expressing herself. Hours slipped away as she mapped out her thoughts. Sketches of collaborative projects began taking shape in her mind. Ideas flowed like paint, bold and unrestrained. She envisioned working alongside others who shared her passion for innovation, how it could fuel her creativity, while offering her a chance to take a stand for herself. But as her excitement grew, so did her anxiety. Would her co-workers embrace this shift? The familiar anxious whispers began to emerge again. What if they dismissed her attempts as trivial distractions? A pang of resentment surfaced. Why should she be afraid to pursue her passions while others seem to seize life freely? Her son's laughter echoed again, a gentle reminder of what was at stake. Not just her aspirations, but the profound example she aimed to set for him. Resolutely, she decided to take the next step, reaching out to her colleagues. She could bring them into this exciting world she craved. Sarah jotted down notes for an email, hoping to convey her enthusiasm while articulating her desire for input and collaboration. The act of inviting them to partake in her journey felt both exhilarating and terrifying, as if she were preparing to peel back layers of her guarded self. After crafting the email, she hesitated, her finger hovering over the send button. Every part of her screamed to retreat and return to the safety of silence. What if they rejected her ideas? Yet a stronger urge pushed her forward, this fear doubtlessly tied to her own past blockages, the phantoms of suffocating expectation surfacing just at the moment her spirit began to lift. With a rhythmic thud of her heartbeat pulsing in her ears, she pressed send. The decision felt monumental, like capturing the leading edge of a wave waiting to crash, uncertain but potent. In that moment, the boundaries of her comfort began to dissolve, revealing the vulnerable yet vibrant self she had withheld for too long. She could feel the buoy of possibility lifting her spirits. Maybe this was part of her metamorphosis. The act of sharing her journey invited connection, complicity, and a chance to transform doubts into dialogue. And yet, lurking behind the exhilarating rush of new beginnings, a nagging thought pressed against the back of her mind. Would her past ever truly stay behind her? The phone buzzed once more, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a text from James. "Excited to see your ideas come to life. Looking forward to our next meeting." Could this be her turning point? Or would the shadows of her past re-emerge, testing her resolve? Sarah's heart raced, not just with anticipation, but with the weight of approaching choices that tugged at her emerging identity. As she wrestled with her thoughts, one single question remained. What if the past, masked in the form of a familiar face, decided to confront her right when she dared to soar? With a curious mix of anxiety and hope swirling in her mind, Sarah sat back, the hum of the office around her receding into a background buzz. The still air carried the weight of her decision. What if this was the catalyst she needed to fully embrace her creativity? Or would the specters from her past come to haunt her again? A blend of excitement and trepidation coursed through her veins, urging her to lean into the uncertainty. As the days progressed, Sarah found herself constantly checking her phone for responses to her email. Each vibration sent a jolt of anticipation echoing through her. Her co-workers, whom she had invited into her vision, were a mixed bag, some enthusiastic, others skeptical. Their replies reflected their own fears and inhibitions, giving voice to uncertainties that resonated with her own journey. And yet, there was a sense of solidarity and vulnerability. She realized they were all navigating their creative confines, mirroring her struggle in different ways. One afternoon, Sarah was pulled from her thoughts by a soft knock at her office door. It was Claire, one of her colleagues, with an expression that hinted at something important to say. "Can we talk?" Claire asked, slightly hesitant. "Of course," Sarah replied, motioning her in. They sat across from each other, the table between them laden with a few disheveled project folders. Claire began to share her own creative ambitions, revealing dreams she had long shelved. "You know," she said, her voice low, "I read your email about collaboration. It struck a chord with me. I've been dying to sketch again, but I never found the courage." Surprise washed over Sarah. As they delved deeper, the conversation began to blossom into something profound. Claire's willingness to speak openly about her own fears felt like a mirror reflecting Sarah's desire to transform her insecurities into artistic expression. "Let's not wait for permission. Let's create something together," Claire suggested. The excitement beamed from her, and it ignited a spark in Sarah. An idea formed in the periphery only moments before began to crystallize. What if they hosted a brainstorming session, combining their talents with others in the office? It could be a space where they could explore ideas without judgment. The thrilling prospect of collaboration with Claire felt like a portfolio of fresh possibilities. This was a stepping stone, an opportunity to cement her commitment to growth and creativity. However, that niggling doubt resurfaced. What if this plan fell flat, leaving them exposed and defeated? What if it turns into an embarrassing fiasco? A voice echoed in her mind, mocking her vulnerable resolve. But another voice emerged. It was the one that dared her to move beyond her comfort zone. She had an ally now. They could navigate this journey together. What mattered was her evolving commitment to pursue that which felt true. Motivated, Sarah gathered her notes and reached for her phone, drafting another message, this time to all her co-workers, inviting them to a collaboration meeting the following week. As she pressed send, the rush of adrenaline coursed through her once more. Each decision pushed her deeper into the enchanting cacophony of creation. A flicker of excitement shaped the outline of her newfound purpose, one she had only glimpsed through the shadows of her past fears. Just as a wave of assurance began to wash over her, a message popped up on her screen from James. "I'd like to meet and discuss the concept more. Got time tomorrow?" The request was straightforward, yet it resonated with her insecurities. Was he interested in her ideas, or had he gleaned a peek into her vulnerabilities? Under the glow of her screen, the weight of uncertainty clenched around her. It felt as if the past were gathering its forces, veiled in the guise of potential renewal. Could she share her new journey with him, unveiling her vulnerabilities to someone who represented both possibility and fear? She stared at the blinking cursor, embodying her decision. The confrontation with her past loomed closer, tangibly transforming the air as she readied herself to face an uncharted territory. As she prepared to respond, one question danced in her mind. Could she harness this moment as a true testament of her growth, or would the past swallow her whole? A sense of urgency stirred within Sarah as she realized that her upcoming meeting with James was more than a simple conversation. It was an opportunity to validate her journey. The previous discomfort surrounding their interactions echoed loudly in her mind, memories of dismissive comments and turbulent exchanges flashing before her. Frustration had often left her questioning her worth, fueling a persistent fear that her ambitions were trivial compared to the interests of others. She focused on the task at hand, preparing to articulate her vision for the collaborative project. Her notes sprawled across the table like a canvassed landscape of creativity, littered with ideas, sketches, and half-formed thoughts. Yet, as she reviewed them, her mind was tugged by shadows of doubt. Did her colleagues even take her seriously? Would James be able to recognize her growth when she had often erred in showcasing her ideas? Just as she felt herself teetering at the edge of self-doubt, a realization crystallized amid her swirling thoughts. Emotional vulnerability often birthed creativity and connection. Could she allow herself to present not just an idea, but herself? She envisioned walking into the meeting as a person who was forging her path, rather than retreating back into the shadows of her self-imposed limitations. The next morning, apprehension braided into excitement as she entered the conference room. The space echoed with relentless potential, quiet yet alive with unexpressed creativity. James was already there, scrolling through his notes. He glanced up as she approached, offering a cordial nod that settled some of her nerves. "Thanks for meeting with me," James started, a hint of respect lining his tone. "I've been thinking about the project you proposed. It piqued my interest." The tension in Sarah's stomach eased slightly. This was no longer just about his approval. It was an exchange of ideas, a dialogue that could transform a conceptual spark into a lit flame. Sarah felt a rush of confidence surging through her as she presented her ideas, emphasizing the collaborative aspect. "I believe that pooling our talents can yield unexpected results. Each person has something unique to contribute," she insisted, her voice firm yet inviting. In that moment, she was not just advocating for a team project, she was claiming her position within the sphere of innovation. With each explanation, she monitored the shifts in James's demeanor. He listened intently, nodding, occasionally interjecting with questions that directed the conversation deeper into the realm she envisioned. It was apparent he was engaged. His interest kindled something within her, a notion that her ideas might indeed resonate beyond the confines of her self-doubt. As they delved deeper into specifics, Sarah uncovered another layer of confidence. She shared her perspective on failure, reflecting on how it was not a catastrophe, but often a stepping stone toward breakthroughs. The importance of creating a safe space for their colleagues to voice fears alongside ambitions emerged prominently in their discussion. However, the conversation swiveled unexpectedly when James leaned back, a contemplative look crossing his features. "You know, this idea of collaboration, it's powerful. But I wonder, what happens if someone in the group isn't on board? How do you deal with resistance to creativity?" His question surprised her, momentarily throwing her off balance. Sarah took a breath, the reality of facing dissent now swarming her thoughts. Could her new approach hold firm in the face of skepticism? Determined to maintain her momentum, Sarah articulated her vision. "Resistance can be an ally if approached with empathy. I believe every voice, even the hesitant ones, has value. Instead of yielding to fear, we need to engage those concerns, turning them into collective strength." This new layer of self-awareness illuminated her understanding of leadership. She had faced resistance before, but this perspective shifted the narrative from confrontational to collaborative, emphasizing dialogue over discord. As the meeting wrapped up, James seemed genuinely impressed. "You've really thought this through, haven't you? I'm excited to see where this goes." Stepping back into the rhythm of the office, Sarah felt a surge of empowerment. This was only the beginning, not just for her ideas but her transformation. A team brainstorming session loomed ahead, but this time she wouldn't allow fear to dictate her narrative. Yet the specter of dissent still hung in the air, a puzzle yet to be solved. Would the others welcome her vision, or would they cling to their own reservations? The thrill of unknown responses churned in her mind as she prepared to face the group. The next conversation awaited, and Sarah felt the weight of both potential and uncertainty pressing down, an anticipation tempered with the knowledge that she was ready to embrace whatever came her way. The atmosphere in the room was electric as Sarah entered, her heart thudding with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The faces of her colleagues, each with their own brands of skepticism or support, greeted her. Todd, with his usual air of superiority, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, while Rebecca shot her an encouraging smile. Sarah grounded herself, aware that this moment would be another crucible for her newly developed sense of self-worth and leadership style. Thanks for joining us today, she started, her voice steadier than she felt. I'm eager to present my vision for the project and hear all of your thoughts. The group settled in, and Sarah began her presentation. She navigated through her notes with the fluidity of someone finally stepping into their purpose. Ideas flowed, and she could see curiosity sparking in their eyes. It wasn't just about her concept anymore. It was about inviting them into the dialogue, a collaboration steeped in mutual respect. However, as the discussion shifted toward feasibility, Todd's brow furrowed and he interjected, "That sounds nice, Sarah, but let's be realistic. Not everyone will buy into this collaboration philosophy. People have their own agendas." His tone dripped with condescension. A knot twisted in Sarah's stomach, but she maintained her poise. This was the crunch moment she had anticipated. Could she pivot from his cynicism to an assertive rebuttal without betraying her own values? "Every agenda has its merit, Todd," she replied, keeping her voice calm. "By understanding individual motivations, we can align personal goals with our project objectives. It's not about erasing differences, but leveraging them to create something greater." Todd opened his mouth as if to respond, but Rebecca jumped in. "I agree with Sarah. We need to foster a space where everyone feels comfortable voicing their opinions. It's how we grow, right?" Her support threw Sarah a lifeline, shifting the dynamic slightly. For a moment it seemed as though the tide might turn in her favor, but Todd wasn't finished. "And what happens when someone refuses to play ball? We can't just talk it out, especially with difficult personalities. There are deadlines and results to deliver." His challenge hung heavy in the air, thick with skepticism. A myriad of counter-arguments raced through Sarah's mind. Could this be the moment where she trusts her instincts? "Definitely, deadlines are crucial," she began, employing a strategy of acknowledgement combined with her core belief. "But I see resistance as an opportunity for growth, not just a hurdle. If someone isn't on board, we must investigate why. Sometimes people resist because they feel unheard. Engaging their concerns can help us pivot and adapt our approach." As she spoke, she witnessed a gradual transformation in the room. James nodded thoughtfully, and even Todd's posture softened slightly, though skepticism still danced in his eyes. What if she was not just facing resistance, but also paving a path for others to feel empowered? Yet the nagging doubt remained. Are you prepared to handle those who might see this approach as a weakness rather than a strength? Todd's question lingered, a reminder of her past insecurities. "I believe the strength lies in vulnerability," Sarah declared firmly. "If we can openly address objections and encourage honest discussions, we create a framework where everyone feels invested, not just compelled. That's the kind of leadership we need." A pulse of energy surged through her as she concluded her thoughts. She locked eyes with her colleagues, each face reflecting a mix of admiration and contemplation. Perhaps today was more than just a professional discussion. It was a moment of self-revelation and courage. Just as the conversation began to shift towards practical next steps, Sarah felt a spark of hesitance. What if the answers she sought weren't easy? The path ahead was still littered with potential resistance, and the clarity she experienced felt both empowering and daunting. "Let's put this into action," Rebecca suggested, her enthusiasm infectious. "Agreed," James added, breaking into a smile. But just as Sarah felt the tide turning, she sensed Todd's grip tightening on the edge of the table. "Hold on," he said sharply, signaling for attention. "Before we proceed, let's clarify one thing. Are we all really ready to embrace this vulnerability idea? Because with certain individuals, that could backfire spectacularly." An icy knot formed in Sarah's throat, the tension rising as she sensed that Todd's looming opposition hadn't faded yet. The room fell silent, and she realized that their next discussion could either fortify her new approach or plunge her back into the shadows of self-doubt. With a deep breath, Sarah prepared for the confrontation ahead, aware that this was not just a project discussion. It was a defining moment in her journey toward authentic leadership. Would she find the strength to guide her team beyond resistance, or would the obstacles prove too great? The stakes had indeed never been higher. As Sarah sat at the round conference table, Her heart pounded with both anticipation and trepidation. The air hummed with unspoken expectations. This moment was no longer about just an art project. It had transformed into an affirmation of her journey, her transforming identity, and her courage to assert her vision amidst doubt.
Let's clarify one thing. Are we all really ready to embrace this vulnerability idea? Because with certain individuals, that could backfire spectacularly. Todd's words struck like a bell in the silent room, and Sarah felt the tension coil around her like a tight knot.
But this was her moment. Recollections of her earlier self, the one stifled by fear and comfort, flooded her mind, reminding her of how far she had come. "Absolutely, Todd," she countered with calm conviction. "Vulnerability invites authenticity. It lays the foundation for trust, essential in fostering creativity. If we want to push boundaries, we must feel safe to share our thoughts and doubts." The room stayed silent for a moment, but second by second, reassurance anchored her heart. She could witness the subdued nods of agreement from a few colleagues, each small affirmation building momentum. But Todd persisted. "That's great in theory, but what if it leads to conflict or chaos? We all have complexities. Are we truly ready to navigate that?" "Conflict can lead to clarity, Todd," Sarah replied, her voice steady. "If approached thoughtfully, it creates avenues for innovation. That's where real growth resides." In a split second, Sarah recognized the relevance of her words around her colleagues. She wasn't simply advocating for an artistic endeavor. She was presenting a lifestyle choice centered on growth, mutual respect, and shared vulnerability. The old fears that had loomed over her now felt like ripples instead of waves. She looked around the table, locking eyes with James, who offered a supportive smile. It was a gentle reminder that she was not alone on this quest. As conversations flowed, Sarah encouraged everyone to voice their reservations. An unspoken pact of trust began to emerge. One colleague brought up concerns about workloads. Another hesitated due to fear of judgment. Instead of allowing these concerns to dissolve into rebuttals or dismissals, Sarah navigated the dialogue with a delicate balance of empathy and assertiveness. "These are valid concerns. Let's explore them together." Each contribution added depth to her proposal. This was no longer solely her dream, but a collective aspiration, an interwoven tapestry of ideas that had the potential to flourish. The conversation began to thrive, blossoming with renewed energy, marking the dismantling of hesitation and doubt. Together, they outlined plans that answered not only Sarah's vision, but addressed the collective needs of the team. Ideas flowed as laughter erupted and creativity surged. "If we are going to succeed together, we need to establish a shared commitment that includes space for everyone's voice," Sarah emphasized, feeling liberated. Hours later, as the meeting concluded, the room buzzed with invigorated excitement. Sarah felt more than just a sense of accomplishment. She felt validation for her transformation. The whispers of self-doubt that had haunted her for years began to fade. She was becoming the leader she had once aspired to be. Just as she gathered her things to leave, James approached her. "Incredible work, Sarah. Your vision and determination inspired the team. I can see how the atmosphere shifted." His words resonated deeply within her, a confirmation of her growth and an acknowledgement that she had not only contributed creatively, but also on a more profound level of leadership. She glimpsed the future unfolding paths previously obscured by fear. Outside the building, Sarah lifted her gaze to the sky, breathing in the crisp air. The clouds had parted to reveal the afternoon sun's warm embrace, a metaphor for her rising spirit. She had taken significant strides toward embracing change, and each step felt purposeful. As she reflected on her journey, Jake's declaration earlier echoed in her mind. Sometimes things aren't about money. She was no longer laboring solely for survival. She was sculpting a future rich in authenticity. In the days that followed, Sarah watched her ideas gain traction. The discussions with her colleagues burgeoned into collaborative workshops, and feedback flowed constructively. Each session recharged her spirit and fortified her identity. Her creativity flourished with each interaction, painting a tapestry filled with innovative sparks. Yet the road was not without emotional labor. A message appeared from Todd one evening, questioning the validity of their creative format. Instead of retreating into self-doubt, she harnessed the spirit of their meeting, vulnerability as a gift. In her response, she opened up about the process of growth they all shared, framing Todd's skepticism not as opposition, but as an invitation to spark further dialogue. Their exchange taught her that the path of progress curved unpredictably. It brought tensions, but these moments also offered rich opportunities for engagement, allowing connections to blossom within the collective landscape. Just as she dared to challenge the past's constraints, James proposed an exhibition showcasing the creative fusion of desires, those of her colleagues along with her own journey, the embodiment of textual dreams made visual. As the date approached, anticipation rippled through her soul, propelling her toward the formidable truth that her transformation extended beyond herself into the realms of collaboration and support. Inside her, she carried the ambitions of not just the artist she aspired to be, but also the mother committed to inspiring her son's belief in endless possibilities. The night of the exhibition, Sarah stepped into the gallery filled with vibrant energy and warmth from the inviting space. The interactions around her sparkled with genuine enthusiasm. Each reflection of art was bathed in the shared experience that had solidified their collective journey. As she mingled and answered questions, Todd approached once more, extending a hand. "I was critical in the beginning, and I apologize. Your vision has transformed not just your path, it has given us all permission to step out of conformity." The acknowledgement sparked something new within her. "Thank you. It took courage to seek your input, and I've learned that conflicting ideas can foster growth." Amidst the jubilation, she spotted Jake's familiar face, beaming with pride. His presence served as her anchor. Everything she had done was not only for herself, but also for him, to reflect the nuances of their journey. An artist, an entrepreneur, and a loving mother. In that moment, Sarah felt an invincible ripple of satisfaction flood her heart. She had risen and accomplished everything she once feared. She forged ahead with purpose and a newfound commitment to embrace the constant transformation of her creative soul, ready to face whatever the future held. As she turned to the crowd, lifted by an overwhelming sense of fulfillment, she understood that true mastery was rooted in her insecurities rather than separate from them. The moments of vulnerability shaped her journey into an art form that transcended expectations. Are you ready to embrace your own journey toward transformation? Identify those constraints that hold you back, and decide today to shatter them. Step into your truth, and remember that vulnerability is power. You will never regret seizing your fullest potential. Your moment begins now. Subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It genuinely makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear your thoughts. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand how vital your support is to keeping this inspirational journey alive.